Let's move on to the second item, 3rd and 4th Avenue discussion. This is kind of a result of a couple meetings ago. I haven't brought up addressing, so Mr. Russell, if you want to.
Yeah, just briefly, and then I'll turn it over to Public Works to do a more in-depth presentation and review of material. 3rd and 4th Avenue East are currently one-ways in the transportation plan, as outlined as going back to two-way traffic. That had always been difficult because they were on our federal urban highway taxation system. You had to go through all sorts of process to do anything, and it had to be in line with some of the broader goals that impact far beyond the municipality. With the addition of 4 Mile Drive onto that urban system as part of the bypass project, 3rd and 4th Avenue were removed from it, so now they are under our domain, and we can fulfill what was in that transportation plan. We thought we'd just do a rundown so council has all the information to just have a formal discussion on is that the avenue we want to go. Obviously, we've had some significant changes since 2008 in terms of just overall traffic in general, both bypass, Highway 93 in the downtown area. Just thought it'd be a good idea to bring it up to the council for general discussion. We can go over, like I say, some of the history and some of the things that probably should be done as part of any conversion, if that's the direction council wants to go, but also some of the other parameters related to it. So with that, I'll just turn it over for presentation to start off on some of that different information.
Great. This is pretty basic, but we're just going to mostly depend on the transportation plan that was done originally in 2006 and updated in 2008 to come up with this. So modifying 3rd and 4th Avenue East from one-way traffic to two-way traffic. One of the things I thought was interesting as I was looking at this, I did a Google search just to see what others were saying about converting a one-way to a two-way. And actually there's some interesting articles. This article was based on a study by John Gilderbloom, and he released that at an International Making Cities Livable conference. And the study that he conducted found that switching from a one-way to a two-day reduced accidents, it increased traffic, and it also slowed down traffic.
It increased traffic?
It increased traffic.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there's always a lot of the studies point towards it increases traffic on the streets, but we'll get more into that too.
Okay.
The report was mostly concerning multi-lane one-ways and not necessarily residential single-lane like we have. The second article found that there were fewer collisions, less crime, and higher property valuations. And this third article, focused mostly on how downtown commercial vitality was improved. So there's definitely some benefits to switching from a one-way to a two-way. Most of these were, like I said, in commercial areas, not residential areas, which is the case for 3rd and 4th Avenue East. So I moved on to see what the Federal Highway Administration said, and they provide a couple of the pros for one-ways. As it turns out, one-way streets are simpler for pedestrian crossings because pedestrians only have to look one way to find their gap in traffic. And also, two-way streets that are converted to one-way streets the other way around reduce pedestrian crashes. However, one-way streets tend to have higher speeds, which is negative. So this is certainly a concern for a residential neighborhood and streets fronting a school. They go on to say that two-way streets tend to be slower due to friction. In this example, you can see cars parked on both sides of the street, and you have two-way traffic, and that friction creates traffic calming. So just a little bit of history. As far back as anyone in the office can remember, 3rd and 4th Avenue East have been one-way streets. I'm not real sure when they were added to the urban route system, but at least as far back as 1980, right, Tom?
I grew up on 4th Avenue East, and I can tell you in the early 1970s it was one way.
Yeah.
4th Avenue East was.
Good. More recently, we had the transportation plan done in 2006 by Robert Pesce and Associates, and they completed a transportation plan for the city of Kalispell and some of the outlying areas. and this was updated in 2008 to account for some of the projects that were completed. And then in 2013, as you were just talking about, the Technical Advisory Committee removed 3rd and 4th Avenue East from the urban route system, and mostly so that they could put that money towards 4 Mile Drive and get that completed with the bypass project. And so that brings us to today. So the functionality of these two streets was described in detail in the 2008 transportation plan. Currently, both avenues are classified as minor arterials. This is a figure 2-2 from the transportation plan. Typically, minor arterials interconnect with principal arterials. In this case, we'd have Highway 93 and Highway 2 as principal arterials. They typically accommodate trips of moderate lengths. They include all arterials that are not principal arterials. The spacing varies typically between them from several blocks to a half mile in developed sections of town. Here they're right next to each other. Typically minor arterials are not in residential areas. So other more typical examples of minor arterials in Kalispell are Meridian Road, Woodland Avenue, Center Street, and 3 Mile Drive. The average annual daily traffic for 3rd Avenue East ranged from 3,100 to 4,100 based on that 2003 data for the 2006 study, and 4th from 500 to 2,280. This is another figure from transportation plan, and that red rectangle goes around 3rd and 4th Avenue East, just so you can see the traffic counts as a part of that study. The level of service for unsignalized intersections is a measure of the delay experienced by each movement within the intersection. This table is from the transportation plan. As you can see, a delay of 10 seconds or less is categorized as a level of service A, which drops down to a level of service F for a minute or more. 3rd Avenue East in the morning is an A and B, and in the evening a B and C from the study, and 4th was an A and B in the morning and A, B, C, and F in the afternoon. So this is the circles show the ratings. On the left you see the morning, and on the right you see the afternoon for 3rd Avenue East. And then 4th Avenue East, you can see that there's one location with a level of service F, and that's at 4th and 2nd. And apparently this is really bad after school gets out and the traffic runs up, and if 2nd's busy, there's a lot of delay time there. So running speed is defined as the actual vehicle speed while the vehicle is in motion. This is an important characteristic to look at because it's an indicator of the possible need for traffic calming. According to the transportation plan, the running speeds for 3rd and 4th Avenue East in the morning for both of these streets is between 15 and 24 miles an hour. And this is the same case for midday as well as evening. So what this is telling us, at least based on that original study, is that vehicle speeds on 3rd and 4th are where they need to be or should be for a local street.
That's interesting.
The police department just last week or 2 weeks ago had the radar
Trailer.
sign up on 3rd. Do you have numbers off of that?
No.
No, it doesn't
record?
record. No, so it's not a
Good.
data logger. Yeah.
That's all I was wondering. No. Okay. I thought maybe a recording. That would be cool if you had those numbers. If it did. Okay.
They took your picture.
That was that flash as you went by.
So the recommendations from the transportation plan recommended removing 3rd and 4th Avenue from the urban route system. And so by removing 3rd and 4th, as Doug was just talking about, state monies could be focused on higher priorities, and the city could make modifications to 3rd and 4th without getting the input or the blessing of MDT. Secondly, the transportation plan recommended converting 3rd and 4th from one-way streets to two-way streets. This conversion is in line with neighborhood goals. Additionally, there's alternate routes available, so and maybe even preferable as far as transportation goes to send traffic. And
Will you mention those later on?
We'll look at that, yeah.
Okay.
the transportation plan recommended that they mimic other neighborhood streets within the city. And so we'd be looking at a local street section, which has a 5-foot sidewalk, 9-foot boulevard, and a 28-foot pavement width, which is what exists today. So important to note, as we made mention of earlier, modeling does show an increase in traffic. So according to the modeling that was completed by that plan, 3rd Avenue East increased by almost 90% to 7,500 vehicles per day, and 4th by 66% to 5,300 vehicles per day. And then when the bypass is complete, those numbers drop a little bit. So they're still significantly more than they are today, according to the modeling that was completed.
How accurate is modeling?
I don't know. You're putting in the data that you have available, and you're making assumptions, of course. I don't know.
Well, if we
It
look,
seems illogical.
the first number are the numbers that were modeled today for today's use. And we're just a little underneath those. So if you want to compare to what has currently happened, we're under those numbers, those first red-lined out numbers.
So the 3950 was a modeled number, not an actual?
Well, what they do is they create the
Yeah.
model, and then they calibrate the model to the actual numbers. And then they would project that out with a two-way traffic. And actually, those studies or the articles I was referring to earlier, each one of those specified that traffic increased when they switched. It's a good thing, it's a bad thing.
If you switch to two-way traffic.
If you switch
Yeah.
to two-way traffic, yeah.
You're not really going to know until you do it and count it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
count-
Those were all on
Count before, count
multi-lane
after.
one-ways.
Commercial,
Those were, yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's an increase of 5,100 vehicle trips, and that's got to come out of somewhere.
Yeah.
So if that road goes up 5,100 just overnight, that means some places losing 5,100. And I know as we
Right.
talk about it, when you've got that friction on both sides, and it's not a clear two-lane where you can really get up there and keep your vehicle speed, that's where I struggle with how that looks. Because I can see if you had a wide road, parking on both sides, and clear travel lanes, two-way, you could almost double your traffic because you're full movement. But here, we don't have
Well, that's
two clear lanes.
like 5th Avenue West. I mean, that's a clear shot. I can see those traffic volumes there because you're not slowing down to avoid, but
There's no parking.
there's no parking.
And there's no
Exactly.
parking.
Well, is this road, are 3rd and 4th any narrower than 5th?
I just can't see.
No, they're the same. There's just no parking on Fifth West.
Well,
Yeah.
I meant 5th Avenue East.
I just have a
They're
hard
the
time
same too.
believing that it
Yeah.
would jump up to 6,700 and 44.
We just wanted to show you what the modeling results are.
Yeah.
As you were saying, we're not really going to know until we actually do it and we get the traffic counts, you know. And there's a lot of other criteria to take into account when the bypass comes in. We don't know how that's going to actually shift traffic and move through
Right.
the city.
I
So,
think to Tom's point, it's like this is just, you go to two-lane traffic and all of a sudden we're creating more traffic? Where's it coming from? Where's the offset? Just really, doesn't make sense. It just doesn't, intuitively, it doesn't.
As these are set up as minor arterials, you know, they're given the right of way basically, so they are preferable to, say, a 5th Street, like you're saying, because you're going to have uncontrolled intersections. There's going to be a lot slower moving, whereas on 3rd or 4th, there's only limited stops, and so they might still be preferable for that reason. But we can kind of look at
yeah,
that
we'll
here
look at a
in
big
minute.
picture, kind of look at other.
That's what I'm saying, you look at the total traffic count on 3rd and 4th today, and you go to two-lane, it should be split between those two roads.
Could be, or we might have more on Third or First. So then you're going to push traffic too. So,
Yeah, you have a balloon effect.
Yep.
Definitely.
The first day after you had two-way traffic on 3rd or 4th, you would find a new route to get home.
That's true, probably.
And I
Well, it'll
think,
change, yeah.
and that's kind of what we want to do.
Right, exactly. That's exactly.
All right. So, looking at our current data, the most recent data we have on these streets is provided by MDT, and all we really have is traffic counts. According to the 2014 traffic counts, the traffic on 3rd Avenue East ranged from 3310 on the south to 3960 on the north, which is very similar to the historic, and 470 on the south for 4th to 2140 on the north.
I believe those numbers.
The good news is that the volumes haven't increased since 2003. They've actually slightly decreased, as Susie was saying. So what would be necessary steps before the switch? Following is what we see are necessary steps. First, the study recommends that we complete traffic counts on both avenues. We would need to do an impact assessment. This overall assessment should include traffic control for the school zone, which includes pedestrian routes and bus pickup and staging. We were out there about a week ago and we noticed when the buses were parked along the street, that basically becomes a one-way or a one-lane road. And so there's some things that we want to work with the school on there. We'd also want to look at intersection site triangles. You know, if this has been one way since at least the 70s, then we need to verify that traffic coming the other way is going to be able to do that safely and make good turning movements. We need to work on public awareness and education, which could be completed through public meetings, residents' mailings, and then newspaper, TV, radio, social media. We need to do a signage assessment, and so that's kind of twofold. First, we need to determine which one-way signs need to be removed. So, for example, the do not enters, wrong way, and one-way signs would need to be removed. And then we need to look at which signs we need to install. So stops on the opposite side of stop-controlled intersections, pedestrian crossing signs for the other direction, speed limit, and then curb paint, crosswalk, and stop bars. So the cost is actually pretty minimal. We'd be looking at the advertisements, permanent and temporary signage. So temporary signage, when you do place a new sign, you need to highlight it so people that haven't been down the road for a while notice there's something different here. And then the striping, this would be the intersection at 4th Avenue East and 9th Street, just southwest of Hedges School.
Do you see all that nice grass that's growing there? In the corner, we'll talk about that later.
What's that all about?
Semi-recent project.
Oh.
Seeding didn't take very well.
Oh, okay.
And you can see in this picture that we've got stop control one way. On the opposite side, we'd need to add a stop bar. And then on this side, we'd either need to erase half of that stop bar or add an additional bar to make it a full crosswalk.
Sure.
So the timeline for the transition, if we wanted to move on it right away, we need to start working on traffic counts, and we'd have to wait till spring to do that because of snow plowing. We have to put tubes across the road, and those would be eaten up by snow plows. So that would have to be at least in the spring. We need to do our school traffic and route assessment. I made mention earlier about the bus parking. This is a orthometric aerial of the school, and you can see when the buses park on that side, it's very limited for traffic. But there are some other alternatives available. This is 9th, north of the school playground, and if you project out that street, you can see there's some area available. So we'd need to, like I said, coordinate with the school on that. Need to do the site triangle assessment. We think we can get that done by July of next year. And then the earliest point that we would recommend for transition would be the fall of 2016, get us outside of the school year and make that transition a little bit easier. But our recommended date would be summer of 2017. We do have that project on 4th Avenue East where we're replacing water main from Center to 14th. And during that project, we're going to have to create detour route for traffic that typically uses 4th, so it'd be a good opportunity to convert that to two-way traffic and then install the signage required as part of that 4th project. And then here's just some of the maps, just to get an idea of how traffic moves. Traffic's kind of like electricity. It's going to take the path of least resistance. So currently, traffic that's heading westbound on Highway 2 can take the Woodland Park Drive. Traffic from, what's the road to the west, or the east? Willow Glen?
Conrad Drive, isn't it?
It's
The arrow's
Woodland.
is on Conrad.
Yeah, but the traffic would be coming from Willow Glen, right?
Woodland.
Yeah.
Yeah. If they're trying to move south, then they can take 2nd Street over to 3rd, or we have the southbound traffic on Whitefish Stage or Highway 2 that would just take that straight shot all the way through down to 18th Street, where they make that little short connection at the light. So you would think that maybe that 2nd Street traffic might shoot over to Highway 93, but then they'd see that sign that says no left-hand turn. So we're thinking that they might head down 1st to 11th and over. Some of our staff thinks they might go down Woodland Drive to 11th and over. But one thing's for sure, there's a good opportunity for northbound traffic to take 3rd and make that connection all the way through to the north. The 4th is, I think, less impacted by the switch to two-way traffic. And currently, this is the path that they would take to get up to Highway 2. We just talked about how a lot of that might go north. And I just threw those together real quick just so we'd have something to talk from if you wanted to discuss it. From there, I was just going to open it up for discussion.
A question, we can go back that slide. So I was at the NWED annual meeting luncheon last week, and they talked about with the Tiger grant that we're going to have some new crossings put in that will go north-south.
Right.
And they had mentioned maybe 3 that would be west of Main Street, and maybe a new one that would be on the east of side. What is have you guys given any thought process or anything, and maybe that's part of your plan, is to put in a new north-south crossing over there by, you can't do 2nd because it blocks off but basically it's going to have to be 5th or Woodland Avenue if you were to do something. Have you thought about that?
Not a lot.
Yeah, I think when we get to that point, especially in that area, you're going to want to have to do probably a lot of community-related discussions and concepts to see how that interacts with it. You have some easier opportunity on the west side, but I think you look at any of those options and opportunities and what's going to be there, and how do you potentially create another connection, and so create that residential component that you're
Right.
with. And
I know there's been conversation about connecting Woodland across over there to the north, which would probably become a thoroughfare in that sense, drawn down off of.
And if you did that, you'd want to look
Stage.
at some traffic calming
Right,
components
because then
in
you
there.
really start to impact Woodland Avenue.
And then there's opportunities with extended boulevards. You
Yeah.
can decrease traffic lanes to slow them down, extend that sidewalk boulevard further out into the street to create really kind of a unique environment. Again, very preliminary and to say how that would look, because you'd have to do a lot of scoping of that out and see what
Yeah.
that
Okay.
impact would have.
Just I would bring that up because there was that conversation last week. I'd heard that.
I think it would be really important to do a larger traffic analysis too about the flow through traffic after, even after we've changed them to two-way streets and the bypass comes in.
Correct.
How is that impacting Kalispell, and what would that mean putting more traffic on the Woodland? Because in reality, Second and Woodland is one of our most dangerous intersections. So in my mind, it's something that'd be really important for us to look at, to connect through, so.
Yeah. Okay.
But not a bad, connector through there.
I have a question about the traffic study. We're looking at the old traffic study from 2003, and then we're looking at a 2014 that Montana Department of Transportation did, and it went down. I mean, it's very close. It decreased 1%. So why would it be? I know we have in our plan that we have to do a traffic count, but when one was just done and it models something that was done 11 years ago and it's within 1%, do we have to do another full traffic study?
Well, we're not saying traffic study, but traffic count. And I think for us, after you make this change, perception is going to maybe be different than the actual. So we want to be able to have very thorough traffic counts all the way down both of those avenues, so that when someone comes in and says, here's what's happening, we can at least have where we are right now.
A new baseline.
Because right now on 3rd and 4th, we only have traffic counts from 3 spots along that entire thoroughfare for both of them.
And it would be nice to know if it did make a change also. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to be, making a substantial change actually with the streets in that area on the east side. So is it really going to impact it?
Okay.
So the traffic study we're talking about is
Just
traffic count and speed too.
And speed.
So our equipment can record speed. So yes, it'll record speed.
And take
But no camera, right?
And so, when you do your traffic count, where will you be counting? You're going to do it like every. You
We
said
don't
that
know
they
yet.
Did three, they did 3.
We'll figure.
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
did 3 points, and
Yeah.
how many do you think would be necessary to get that done then?
All the hard questions.
Yeah, we'll assess it and look at it to see where we can collect the best data. I
Okay.
can't give you an exact number right now.
I know talking to a lot of the residents when I was walking in that area, there's a lot of concern with, especially stuff around Elrod. Or
Hedges.
Hedges, excuse me.
Hedges, yeah.
2 different school walking. The Hedges school area. So I know that's hard to figure out where the traffic's coming from, going to and from there, but you're going to be branching out as well, or just the 3rd and 4th?
Just the 3rd and 4th is what we'd like to do for the traffic counts, and then we'll know. We can follow up a year afterwards and take the traffic counts in the same locations and see, has it increased, has it decreased, are people finding another route? And that also helps us determine if, one of the things that you look at with school routes is how much of a gap in time do you have between vehicles for a safe crossing.
Right.
So you need to be able to have your counts close enough and be able to look at traffic speeds to determine those safe gaps for kids. So, it'll probably be pretty thorough, like maybe 10 spots per avenue, just so we have a good understanding what's happening, and if we had to look at installing some additional signage, is it warranted or not?
Okay, thanks.
Just a little quick suggestion in relative to the buses, stopping at Hedges for the kids. We cut off 5th Avenue East in between the field and Hedges. I'm wondering if that might not be a great place for the buses to park and pick up kids, because there'd be no traffic, no chance for the kids to get run over.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind also.
Mhm.
They did that when I was going to school there.
I don't know if they
70s.
need a whole block, or if they need more than a whole block or not for all
Yeah,
their buses.
we definitely think we're going to need to work with the school district. So
yeah.
we'd meet with them early on and talk through a lot of the issues that they're having, so we have a big picture understanding of the needs in the area too.
But the footprint of the streets would not change.
No.
Okay.
Would your traffic study include Willow Glen Drive?
No, that would be outside of that. I think that would come maybe with a larger transportation study for that east side area.
Is that
That's one
something we
thing.
could coordinate?
Well, the state is looking at doing a comprehensive traffic study, 2019?
17, 18, a year or so after the bypass opens up. It's a 50-50 match, city pays half, state pays half. And we would look at overall the greater community, a year after we'd start, a year after the bypass is open.
And that's what this came from also, right?
Exactly.
So it's the data, I mean, it's the same type of plan as what
That
we're
would be
using
the
right
plan
now.
update, right?
It'd be a plan update to this. So gives a lot of really great information about Kalispell also.
I guess I'm just concerned if we're looking at traffic counts for those two avenues. I just think it's important if we have the ability to look at where we're pushing that traffic. You know, is it gonna go over to Fifth? Is it gonna go to Willow Glen? I mean, is there any way we could even, you know, one on both ends or
Totally.
something, so that it's coordinated? So if we're looking at a baseline, let's look at the broader baseline, not just those two avenues.
Of course, what they're saying is when you get two-way streets, then you have more traffic on those. Isn't that what you're saying?
It's a possibility. We
Possibility.
just, you know,
I don't think it's gonna happen that way.
right.
Yeah.
Our logic here from
Our
Kalispell is.
logic would be you're going
Well, we can
home.
meet in a year
The
and
only time
we'll
you
give
go to
you, or
Fourth is
no,
when
a
you're
couple
home.
years and we'll give you the information.
Yeah, right.
But as you're saying, we can do traffic counts in some of the other side streets after, you know, after the community has developed those traffic patterns. Yeah, we can go out and do traffic counts and see, you know, after we've actually converted the street, got another baseline, and then we can go outside and see, you know, well, where is the traffic going to? So yeah, we can do those counts too.
And the
Yeah.
roads you're anticipating when staff talked about, Woodland, First, Main,
Yeah.
they're not at max capacity by any means, so they could handle that load currently. And then with the bypass coming in, I mean, if all goes well and that's completed before next winter or whatever, I mean, you could shift a lot of, if any burden is being shifted onto Woodland First, hopefully that is being shifted then to the bypass. So I mean,
Yep.
it's
Yeah. I just don't want to make it worse than what it is now. And I know I want to make it better for the residents that live on those two streets in particular. Because I know, I mean, I drive them every day, and I really do seriously think house values are being affected.
Yeah.
Because I see houses up for sale a lot longer on that street, on those streets. So I mean, I do want input. You know, I really want to hear what the residents say. I know there's some people here tonight too.
Yeah.
That's real important to me.
So what we're really looking for tonight is direction to move forward on doing the traffic study, school route study, and moving forward with the changeover, or what's council thinking, or do we want to hear from the community, or?
I think we need to hear from the community first.
Okay. Or I guess, do we need to give you any more information?
I think you've given us lots.
I think that's,
This is-
expected something different. That was great.
and this has been in the works for a long time. I mean, it's been talked about for a very long time. So I mean, there's a lot of history here, and you know, looking at the chief's accident reports and that kind of information as well. I mean, I think we need to move.
Yeah, well, and we will look at that too. We'll dive into that a little deeper to see what caused those accidents too. Also, so that would be a part of what we will look at also.
But I mean,
FedEx trucks.
when you're looking at just from what we're looking at, I mean, I guess you got Fifth Avenue West. I mean, it's pretty much the same as Third and Fourth East. I mean, it's being used
That's straight.
heavily because of, you know, like
Right.
you said, it's controlled intersections. It's pretty much no stop. You just go.
Yep.
But when you compare it to streets or to avenues that are two-way on the east side, I mean, it's significant. I mean, the information here is significant. So,
that's been real helpful, thank you.
accidents do slow people down.
So we should have more.
Any other questions or any other discussion? I'd like to open the meeting up for public comment related to any of the two items we've discussed this evening. If anyone wants to address the council, please step forward and state your name and address, and give us your thoughts on what you've heard and what you've seen.
They actually physically step forward.
Yeah, that way, because that way we can actually hear
Okay.
through that.
Or that.
Board's probably looking for us.
Sorry. My name's Bill Nelson. I live at 722 4th Avenue East. Lived there for 30 years. And at the time, I think when we bought our house, I didn't really realize the impact of a one-way street and what that would feel like or look like to live there. And we hadn't been there very long before it dawned on us that, boy, there's a lot of traffic and it's going pretty fast. And even if there's a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, 25 is pretty fast. It's unregulated and it's constant. And if they are all going 25, I'm mighty surprised. My guess, my hunch would be that it's closer to 30 and 35. And oftentimes a lot faster than that. But, and so our concerns are many. They're the safety, the noise, the volume. And I guess I respectfully disagree with your projections that the volume will increase.
Yeah, it's just steady projections.
Yeah, and if it's a commercial zone, perhaps, but in a residential zone in here, what I envision happening is, we make it two-way, so then you're in a pause and hesitation mode. If you face oncoming traffic, you have to get behind the car and let the other car go through. That's going to discourage traffic in itself. And it's a lot of destination drivers. It's not the residential people that are using that. And so I see, if it's just residential, you want to see what that looks like. Go to 2nd Avenue East or 5th Avenue East, and they're just going home, and nobody's using it for through traffic, and you could have a picnic in the street and nobody bother you. In my house, if I walk out, and I had my trailer parked there a while back, and I was in and out, and the door is on the street side, and I honestly, I got honked at because I was just within a foot of my door of my trailer, and how dare I be standing in the street with an armload full of stuff. So it's a little disconcerting. It's more than a little disconcerting, but so I think we'll see a reduction in volume and certainly speed. If we return these to two-way streets. So other things, I guess you have alternative plans for the bus staging if it was on the side street at night. You mentioned the street that's blocked on 5th, for the playground. Mm-hmm. And this is just a wild concept that came to me as you said that. What if the front side was also blocked? I mean, then nobody's going anywhere. I mean, that's just for buses only. Mm-hmm. Maybe they just go in, yeah, and as a possibility. But then you wouldn't have any through traffic or, intentional through traffic. Because then, when I want to go somewhere, a lot of times I'll just shoot down the 1st and then go to Smith's or Super One or whatever that way. I know a lot of people like to use 4th and 3rd as a thoroughfare, and that's what it's become. It's an urban highway, basically. So anyway, those are some of my comments. Any questions for me? Thank you so much for considering this. We really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Margaret Davis. I'm a homeowner at 160 Charlotte Avenue, and my comment is best for its growth policy, but primarily the transportation element of the growth policy. And obviously they're interrelated, and I think it's imperative that there is a post-bypass completion transportation update. The current plan is desperately out of date and inadequate to serve the interests of the cities. And because there are no ratepayers to finance highways, all the money that the city has available to make major road improvements or transportation infrastructure improvements is either federal or state in its source. The bypass will produce the effect of more traffic coming off 4 Mile intersection. The priority to go as far as Kidsport or Highway 93 with an improved road means that Grandview will be accepting much heavier loads from the bypass. And Grandview is not adequate. It from east of Highway 93, it is clearly substandard, makes a big right-hand turn, and then will be a useful and importantly for people accessing the H1 zone. And the hospital zone, of course, has grown. Hospital services are consolidating, and there are thousands of employees, thousands of patients, thousands of related office functions in that area, and all that's traffic. So finally, I think a trimming of this length of the growth policy draft was great. You can keep going with that one. There is some new content in the strike draft versus the clean draft, and so I'd ask the committee to look at those new elements and new additions that we're not just editing content carefully, and see if that's exactly the way you want to phrase or present those things in the policy. And I appreciate that the KRMC is listed as a major public facility as our fire stations. That was an addition to the public facility or infrastructure map, and that ought to be highlighted as one of the big traffic draws and considerations for public safety. And, someplace down the line, you might want to add the airport to that too. So, thank you very much, and good luck with the growth policy. Probably see me again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deborah Lungton. I live on 3rd Avenue, 200th block. I don't quite understand how this traffic is going to go 2 ways when it's one way and there's cars parked on the left side of the street and cars parked on the right side of the street. And when we get out of our vehicle, we have to stop and look to see if there's a vehicle coming because we don't have room to open our door. So if you've got vehicles coming both ways, I don't understand how there's going to be room for 2 sets of vehicles. Because we get all that whole street on 3rd Avenue, on the 200 block, is all the people that work around here because they don't park down here on 3rd Street because that's 20-minute parking. And if they can't park behind all these buildings and they don't have, then they park over on our street. So, we have 2 lanes of parked cars every morning. And I don't understand how we're going to get all this traffic going back and forth. And another thing, I don't understand how you're saying they're going 25 miles an hour. Because when they get to that stop sign, after they leave that stop sign, that pedal is to the metal. And by the time they get down to the church down here, the Assembly of God Church, they're flying. I sit on my porch every day. I see it. The kids come walking to the library from the school. I can't tell you how many times I've held my breath because the cars don't stop for the kids. So I don't understand how this 2-lane traffic is going to solve anything. Unless you can put a bunch of stop signs down that street, which should be anyway. So because it's a straight shot. They have a stop sign here on this corner, and then there's not a stop sign for 8 or 10 blocks. So they can really haul butt. So anyway, my husband and I wrote a letter with some of the neighbors. I'll leave it here with you. My vehicle got hit twice last year. And it's a one-way. So, it's going to be, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. You know, I think it's way too much traffic. I think if you put more stop signs in there, that would deter a lot of people from going down this street. So I hope you'll consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you want your plastic cover back?
Yeah.
Any other public comment related to those two items?
Pauline Shordall, live on the west side, but I went to the meeting when we heard all of the situation and how they were asking, and when we went to that Wednesday meeting. I was stunned to find out how much this traffic goes all night and how little sleep children are awakened. People can't sleep the night, this screeching, so please, when you do the count, go later. I was just stunned, and I think you could ask them, they'll give you better. Children can't sleep the night through. Think of what that does in the elementary school or the high school, because that traffic doesn't stop. So please ask them more. I just left with that pain, and I haven't been able to get the pain as a thought. We have traffic on 3rd Avenue West, but not at night.
Thank you.
My name's Emily Mazer, and we live on 3rd Avenue East, 600 block. And I have a couple of questions. First, is your slideshow presentation, is that something that we can look at online?
I can give you a copy. Do you have an email I can send it to?
Yeah.
I'll get it with you afterwards.
I was wondering, when you were first starting those first few slides and you pulled up the articles,
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned, I think in a couple of them, that they were looking at multi-lane
Mm-hmm.
things. Is the modeling that's used to predict the traffic increase, is that a model that is created around these local circumstances, or is that like using a program that would take into account, multi-lanes, or it being?
Yeah, you define your streets inside the program, and then you set up the traffic counts that you receive. You calibrate to those. It knows, if it's a single lane or multi-lane traffic.
Okay.
You put all of your data into it.
Interesting. Well, if it's possible to look at your stuff, I think it would be kind of neat. And just as to kind of reflect on what you were saying, and also on what you were saying at the beginning, it's interesting because I had a very negative response to the whole idea of switching anything, mostly because I don't like change. And I know my parents have the same sort of response and have gone in various ways, just because I think they're afraid that it would become a snarled up mess. But in learning a little bit more about it, I think it's just very interesting to me, like the concerns that you're pointing out about, how do you get out of your car? And at the same time, I think, well, is changing from a one-way to a two-way going to make that a more complicated problem, or will that actually ease the problem? And I feel like I don't quite know yet. But
We don't either.
I know. If we could just get rid of half the people driving, that would be my choice. But anyway, my other question was, if you were to say, next year you decide, okay, we're going to go ahead with this, is there a plan with what, are there additional stop sign additions, I guess, that are already set to go with that, or is that something you determine partway through, or?
Yeah, that's not a part of the study, but we follow the manual on uniform traffic control devices, and there are warrants inside that manual that help you determine where a stop sign is warranted and where it's not. So that's even more reason that we need to have accurate traffic counts. But we'd also be looking at car accidents, vehicle speeds. There's 11 items that you would look at for possible warrants for stop signs.
Okay. And as somebody who's just new to this whole world and doesn't know a whole lot, like, is that something that you look at every couple of years as far as if you guys decided, okay, we're not going to switch the one-ways, but we still have, some things we could do to help make those two roads a little bit easier, like, are you guys discussing looking at just adding a few more controlled stop sign sections at the same time, or is that something that?
We usually look at those on a case by case. If someone comes in and says, "This intersection's really bad. I saw an accident here." We'll go to the police department and get the last 3 years of accident reports at that intersection, and we go through an actual analysis of the intersection to see if it warrants a stop sign, for instance, or not. It's not something. It takes quite a bit of time. So
plans going on.
No, we try to do it with our other responsibilities that we have. But yeah.
Well, thanks. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question, another question? If stop signs naturally would, I guess, have an effect for the better at that particular spot, but then the side street that's going through without a stop sign, would that not increase traffic or speed if they know that there's an opposing stop sign? And I guess, anyway, take Fourth as an example. Now, there's stop signs on every block on the cross streets. If those are all removed, would that not slow traffic and reduce volume? Because now everybody has to be careful and look both ways and slow down at each intersection. So is that kind of the traffic slowing process, or?
Yeah, it's a possibility. You try not to make changes in traffic control devices without a lot of careful study to make sure it's going to be successful. And so I guess the way I foresee this is after the change is made, we really need to take a look at the traffic speeds, at the crash data, at the vehicle counts, and determine, and the school zone, and determine, do we need some additional stop signs in here? Maybe we're going to see that, like everyone feels at the table, that traffic's going to shift over to other arterials, and it's really not going to be that big of an issue. If that's the case, it might not be warranted to install stop signs, but we really need to have the data to verify. It's just if you change traffic patterns, it can have effects further out.
Mm-hmm. So with as part of this, and maybe you haven't gotten that far along, I guess, so would if they become two-way streets, would the stop signs along the side streets come out, or some come out, or is that just based on studies?
It's not proposed at this time. We would, the intersections that currently have stops in the one direction, we'd add stops to the other side of that, and then the rest of it we'd base off of further study to determine if they're warranted or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See no other public comment, and we close that section, and to council manager reports, Mr. Restler.
Yeah, I'll just kind of wrap this portion up, if I may. I think we'll go ahead and proceed with the timeline that was proposed in here and it's in the study. And obviously that first part is the data collection. I mean, obviously even here tonight during public comment, we heard two opposing views from people that live in the area, which is what makes that data so much more important. We can have those traffic counts, those speeds that comes in with that, and then take it through that step. So I think it's an important component. And breaking out of our usual framework of discussion here, I would just invite anyone in the community, because there are a lot of technical questions, contact our department at any point in time, because it's a collaborative process, and there's a lot of technical questions that go into it, especially as you're talking, following the data in the Uniform Traffic Control Manual that dictates traffic control devices. Everyone thinks a stop sign at every location is the answer to everything. It really impedes traffic and can be more dangerous in some circumstances. So I just encourage, we're open for questions at any point in time. Please feel free with that. So I just kind of wanted to wrap that up, because we won't be coming back next week with an action item. We're just going to proceed on and get those counts and have some of those discussions potentially with the school district to see what is, and then obviously keep both the council and community updated as we move along with it.
We'll be coming back next week.
Yeah.
That's right. I'll be here by myself because we have no meeting next week.
As a point of, I guess, direction, did the council members have any concerns about actually implementing the two-way if all the studies go well and we get good information when we do the water line improvement on 4th?
I think
That sounds
That would
good
be-
timing,
okay.
because
reasonable.
you're gonna be closing that street down, so
Yeah,
Third
that's why
would
we
become a two-way.
recommend that would be the best
That's
way
your
to go.
detour in a sense.
Yeah. Okay.
And what a way for people to get used to it. I mean,
I did have one
yeah.
statement, one concern. I lived on 5th Avenue East, and first of all, there wasn't a whole lot of cars parked on 5th Avenue East, so it was easy to drive through there. It seems like clear up and down 4th Avenue East and 3rd Avenue East, there's cars parked. And I don't know why that is, because there's alleys.
I think there's a lot of rentals
Okay.
and apartments. I mean, Fourth's got 3 fairly good-sized apartment buildings on, all the ones got a lot of the back.
Some would say that that's because of partly because of the traffic and the.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
by Linderman, you get the school, that creates some
True, too.
parking there. I do think there's the next streets down, there's some parking that comes over out of the commercial district.
I've also noticed that
Residents,
2nd Avenue East is, you go slower up and down 2nd Avenue East because there are more cars parked on that.
That's commercial. That's downtown.
That's downtown folks parking, I take it, huh? Okay.
I think, if anyone wants to take a look at what it could potentially look like, I mean, we've got the example from the public of, where you have the people parking to live or to go to work, and it seems like this parking is bumper to bumper on both sides of the street. Rod and I live on 3rd West, and it's two-way traffic. And you get down by Elrod, just outside the parking district line, where the teachers are parking, or just north of Elrod, where you have parking on both sides of the street, and see how it flows. Or, if you're really adventurous, come down through my block at a football game.
Oh, well,
Because that's when you have bumper-to-bumper traffic, parked vehicles on both sides of the road, and you're still getting traffic flow both directions, but
Oh,
you're
yeah.
going slower, which I think is what they're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at major congestion and how that actually works with parking on. I mean, when I say parking on both sides of the street during a football game, I mean it.
That's slow.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
but you
is-
can still go through.
You can still, and you always got to keep in mind, these streets are the same width.
Yeah, they are.
Whether it's 3rd, 4th, 5th, and so on, these are city streets. They were designed to those standards. So you're getting a two-way traffic, on the same width street that's a one-way right now. So, I mean, it kind of could maybe help, relieve some concerns that you may have if you actually go through it and feel it for yourself. But I drive from my house, and I'm off of 11th, all the way down to Elrod to pick up my kid every evening. And there's cars parked, and there's uncontrolled intersections, there's controlled intersections, and it's really calming, traffic calming. You don't see the traffic that you do on those one ways, and you wouldn't. I mean, I think you're going to get the shift.
Speed, it's-
Right.
By the time you hit the end, I mean.
Well, the speed limit's 25 everywhere, and 15 in the
That's
school
nice
zones.
That's a nice theory.
Right. No, I understand, and that's one of the problems with the one way is that very speed. And you get it on 5th East as well, and you get it there even though it's two-way because you have no traffic.
Yeah.
Or 5th West, I'm sorry. And then I also 11th East and West, same exact example. Though on the west side, I think maybe on the east side too, you can park
Yeah, I don't know.
I know you can
On the
park on
east
the
side.
west side, so you get some of that same feel during football games there too. But you really get a feel of just, you know, the parking alone is calming and everything else. So.
It is parking combs. So, I guess we'll see.
Thank you.
Good.
Mr. Russell,
That's all I had.
that's all you have? Anything else from council?
Yeah, I just think it's important to note too that especially when we do have different sides of the coin, several of the residents over on the East Avenues are in fact bringing to us, I believe, a petition where they're going around to garner support and show us what kind of support they have for going to back to a two-way. So I'm assuming that'll be coming to us at some point too, Mr.
We're
Nelson.
working on that, and it's been interesting. First of all, we're finding out that 80% of the people are out driving up and down 3rd and 4th, so they're not home. And the rest are watching Brock Osweiler play football.
Yeah,
And they're not.
Boy, you chose your times
So we're
wrong.
gonna answer the door, so, yeah, so we have to figure out a good time to catch people. Summer, we decided summertime's the best time, and that's passed, unfortunately, but we're meeting with interesting conversations about that, and like the lady here, and when we went into this, a dozen or more of us kind of got together, and we all felt the same exact way, and we were pretty strong about that, and now we're finding there are other opinions. We all kind of feel like they just need to be brought along so that they'll see how much better it can be. You know, so it's an educational thing as well.
Great.
Great.
Thank you.
Education for all of us.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's another thing, the whole educational aspect of it. I mean, putting your PowerPoint just as a start on the website. You
Yeah,
know,
maybe
in the public
Amy
works
can
section.
post it for you.
That could help get some feedback, you know, and
Yeah.
get the education rolling.
I do have one last question, if I may. On the, or I may not.
You may want to ask the chair.
Sure, go ahead.
The traffic study on the two-way street, and one resident had asked the same question, the modeling of it. Does that modeling take into account cars parked on the side or no cars parked on the side?
I don't know the answer.
Because I really think, I mean, and we all are kind of thinking that really makes a big
Oh,
difference.
yeah.
If there's no cars parked on the side, yes, I can see an increase in traffic from like Fifth Avenue West. But logically, I'm saying if there are cars parked on both sides, I can't logically see an increase. And that's why I was wondering if the modeling is accurate in that sense, cars parked or no cars parked.
It
And it
should
may
be,
not, you may
but
not be able to
we
tell.
don't- We don't have the model, we don't even have the data,
Yeah.
you know, from the model. All we have is the output that's in the report.
Yeah, and
But
it didn't really speak to that.
I would expect that the lane widths are a part of that, but I don't know for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay.
That's the thing, it's you're modeling at a minor arterial road, and it's gonna be a local street.
Yeah.
It changes significantly.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, you got, even from collector, you know, that definition and the design standards now moving forward. Of course, back when these roads were built, you know, the design standards weren't there that says, you know, if you're a collector or a minor, you know, your road changes, your widths and stuff. So
Right.
these are all built to local road standards, yet they've classified themselves into something else. And we see that all over the city.
So the width of those is 60 feet?
No,
The right-of-way.
the right-of-way width is 60 feet.
Okay, what's
yes.
curb to curb?
The face, well, the toe of curb to toe of curb is 28 feet, and then you have a 2-foot curb on each side, so you gain another
I
3.
don't know what toe
They
curb.
almost have a 2-foot curb on each
Concrete
The
side.
front, the edge of the pave
Yeah,
is 28.
okay. So I take, that's a 28 pavement weight, but then you look at First Avenue East, for example, that's much wider, and then there is
Yes.
parking on there. So, I mean, that width, like you're talking, is really gonna play a difference.
Yeah, First Ave East and West also have wider right-of-way, so there's...
Yeah.
there's
I mean, really, I think
They
the
have
first
turn
time you
lane.
drive down it and you're like watching your mirrors and you're like, yeah, this Ford truck's not going down there anymore. I mean, I just really think that's gonna happen.
And that may be very well. I think one of the things we want to do is give a lot of the data, a lot of from hopefully an objective point of view, which is what our
Right.
model does. We aren't going to dispute that
Yeah.
you may be going in and out. That may very well be the case.
Right.
But we tried to give as much data as possible. Even Rogers in his accident data said there's a lot of variables. I'm not going to speculate on what is causing this without further study on it.
Right,
So
right.
I think they're very good points just from a subjective viewpoint about being out there. It may be a in and out instead of a back and forth.
And I'll speak as one of the users of those as an arterial. I do want you to
Me
know
too.
that when I set
I
my
think
cruise
it's
control on
arterial.
25, it just makes me happy as can be to build up that line behind me. But I guarantee you, when I know that that converts from a one-way to a two-line, I'm back over on First Avenue.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna drive through there because I'm gonna take
That's
the
the
path
whole
of least
point.
resistance.
That's the whole point.
Okay,
That
anything
guy
else?
beeping at you when you were holding him back?
Yeah.
That's Tim.
No, I was driving at 93.